Hello all, welcome to Launch Academy's 2023 briefing webinar. It's 3 o'clock now. We're still waiting on some of our attendees joining us, so we're going to leave things for a few more minutes and then we will kick things off. Okay, so again, welcome to Launch Academy 2023's briefing webinar. This is going to be an opportunity for us to showcase some of the technology challenges that we're hosting this year as part of our Launch Academy program. We'll also share some information about what Launch Academy is and who we are as the Offshore Renewable Energy Catapult. You'll have an opportunity to hear from some of our industry sponsors that are really exciting, and we're really glad to be able to announce that they're going to be participating and supporting our program this year. We're still waiting on some attendees joining, but this session is being recorded, and in the interests of using the hour we've got wisely, we're just going to kick things off now. So thank you to all of you for being here, and we'll just get things started. So a bit of an agenda for this session. I'm going to start and provide a bit of a welcome and overview of Launch Academy itself and what the program contains. Following that, we've got John Lakin, a project engineer RWE, providing an introduction to RWE. And then we'll have Daniel Franco providing an introduction to Equinor. This is followed by a session where David Bold will introduce Ørsted and their participation in the program. And then finally, we'll have Bob Flint providing an introduction to BP. Following this, we're really quite excited to present James Thomas, one of our CEO and founder in one of the companies currently participating on our National Launch Academy program. And then finally, we'll go over the application process, what to expect and what it contains. And that will be presented by my colleague, Alex Loudon. We'll finish the session today with a Q&A, and in light of this, please feel free to utilize the Q&A function within Zoom. You should find it at the bottom of your screen next to the chat icon or button. Any questions that come to you throughout the session, please feel free to place them in the Q&A function at the bottom, and we'll get to them at the end and try to answer as many questions as possible at the end of the session. And with that, we'll get started. So the Offshore Renewable Energy Catapult. For those of you that are not aware of us already, we are the UK's leading technology, innovation and research centre for offshore renewable energy. Our mission is to accelerate the creation and growth of UK companies in the offshore renewable energy sector, and we do that in a variety of ways listed on this slide here. Launch Academy is the Offshore Renewable Energy Catapult's flagship technology accelerator program. What we define that is the mission of Launch Academy itself is to remove barriers to commercialization for game-changing companies, and that is removing as many barriers as possible. The Launch Academy itself is driven by challenges or themes that are provided by industry sponsors. And these are inspired by some of the things that they see in a day-to-day and year-to-year basis as this industry has been evolving. The program itself will consist of a cohort of up to 10 companies, and each of these companies will engage in peer learning throughout the 9-month program and be able to learn from one another, and we hope derive increased value from their learning as part of a cohort. There are 9 months of support provided throughout the program, and we provide this support across 3 pillars. The pillars of support that we provide throughout the program are based around specialized industry knowledge, business growth expertise, and professional services. And we believe the support provided throughout these 3 pillars creates the entire ecosystem required for commercializing new products and services into offshore wind. Some of the modules that we will deliver as part of the program are listed on this slide here. Specialized industry knowledge might consist of a technology assessment, a risk assessment, business case analysis, and an Offshore Wind 101 module that will be delivered by ourselves and our industry partners who you're going to be hearing from today. In addition, we've got some really exciting external partners that will be delivering some of the modules you see here, such as our story accelerator, investor readiness, export opportunities, and value proposition, as well as legal services, IP strategy, smart accounting, and equality, diversity, and inclusion, which highlights some of the opportunities for startups that might exist in employing and practicing equality, diversity, and inclusion. Some of the partners that you can expect to partner with and engage with throughout the program, if you were to be successful, include not only ourselves, but our exciting sponsors this year, Ørsted, Equinor, RWE, and BP. But in addition to those, we've got Sustainable Ventures, Inclusive Employers, Stronger Stories, BDO, Shepherd and Wedderburn, and Murgatroyd, providing the variety of support that was listed on this slide previous. This year's sponsors, we have a fantastic cohort of 4 sponsors participating in the program, and they deliver and have provided a list of challenges that are aimed at finding solutions for some of the issues that they see in a day-to-day in the industry. Equinor, Ørsted, and RWE have all created their own challenges, which you'll be able to find on our website, and they're summarized here on this slide. In addition, BP have sponsored our open call this year, aimed at technologies that tackle challenges throughout the industry and not aimed at anything in particular at all. In terms of guidelines for participating in the program itself, you must be a UK registered company or intend to relocate to the UK to be eligible for Launch Academy. In addition, it's advised that you're a startup or an early stage company, and you must be seeking to commercialize a new product or service into the offshore renewable energy sector. You must be able to demonstrate how participation in Launch Academy will impact your business, and that could be in a variety of ways, such as further developing your technology or solution, raising investment, increasing your full-time employee headcount, etc. And finally, technology readiness level of approximately 4 to 8 in terms of your solution. I would like to stress these are guidelines, and we'd encourage any and all applications if you feel that you would benefit from participating in this program. Please feel free to contact myself or my colleagues if you have any questions in terms of eligibility. Now, finally, before we jump into our sponsor introductions, we have some success stories that I'm just showing on the screen here. These are companies that have participated in our Launch Academy 1 and 2 programs that were hosted in 2020 and this year in 2022. As you can see, there's a variety of impacts that companies experience throughout their participation in Launch Academy and beyond. And there's a real variety in terms of the types of technologies that we've seen throughout the programs we've run thus far. And it just really goes to show the impact and the dynamic industry that we're currently we're working within. And that's it from me, and we're going to jump straight into our next session, which is going to be delivered by one of our sponsors today. So I'd invite our John Lakin, if you'd like. You're ready, we can begin.
Just sharing screen. Hang on a second. Can you all see the screen, hopefully?
Yeah, fantastic, John. That's good to go.
Cool. Right, hi everyone, I'm John, work for RWE, obviously. I work as a project engineer on the Sophia project. Really excited to be part of this. Thanks for being here. Just going to briefly explain the 3 challenges that RWE are interested in and need help in. And also wanted to say that we have a webinar on Friday, which I've got the link for in this presentation, which covers these challenges in a lot more depth than I will. So please join if you're interested in taking part. So like all of us here, RWE are aiming to help enable net zero by 2030. So this initiative is really helpful. This slide just basically shows all the projects that RWE have got in the pipeline. So there's quite a lot going on currently. Right, and this, for those of you who aren't aware of the Sophia project, the project that I work on, this is just giving a bit of a background. It's quite an exciting project to work on because it's the largest, one of the largest offshore wind farms in the world. 195 kilometers offshore, 1.4 gigawatts installed capacity with 100 turbines, and enough to power 1.2 million homes. So it's quite a good project to be part of. Right, I'll get to the challenges. So we're looking into 3 areas. So 1 is cable monitoring and protection. 2 is autonomous technologies for offshore wind. And number 3 is bird monitoring and protection. So cable monitoring, the cable protection and monitoring, cable failures are costly to repair and lead to significant losses in energy production. We're looking for solutions in all sorts of areas, but a couple could potentially be in standardization of cables, protection systems, and materials to improve cable design. But there's a ton more, which is going to be discussed on Friday. The second area is autonomous technologies for offshore wind. The sorts of areas that we're looking into here are subsea surveys, aerial surveys, including blade inspections and repair, and then transport, drones for cargo and things like that. And the third one is bird monitoring and protection, which is a huge bit of offshore wind, a big topic in offshore wind. So in terms of monitoring, we're looking at collection of data on flight speed and age class, automized species definition, and acoustic monitoring for seabirds. And protection could be mitigation of negative impacts on birds and any potential habitat enhancement. So that was a very brief introduction. All of those topics, there's lots more areas. I just touched on a few of interest. So this is the link. Oh, this is the link for the webinar on Friday, which can I post that in the chat if possible. And this is my email and my colleague Sue Vincent's. If you've got any more questions, then get in touch. Cool. That's it. Thank you.
All right, John, thank you very much. That was fantastic. And yeah, pretty much right on time. And with that, we'll jump into our next session, which is going to be presented by Daniel Franco from Equinor. Daniel, whenever you're ready.
Yes, let me just get my screen. Is it working? Just let me know if it's sharing correctly.
Yep, fantastic. That's coming through. All good.
Brilliant. So thanks everybody. My name is Daniel and I am the technical manager for the Celtic Sea project that Equinor is working on. Yes. So just a little bit before we jump into the challenges about Equinor and our presence in UK. We are pioneers on the floating wind technology. We are the biggest operator of oil and gas in the North Sea, including there Norway and UK. We have over 50 years of experience. We are working on floating, bottom fixed, and many other low carbon solutions. So a little bit of Equinor in UK. We've been nearly 40 years working in supporting the UK economy. We have now currently 750,000 UK homes being powered for our operations. And then we have Sheringham Shoal, Dudgeon, the world's first floating highway in Scotland. We're working on highway in Tampen as well. And very close to Sofia, we have Dogger Bank in partnership with SSC and now Borgron. It's the largest offshore wind farm right now in the world. Equinor has very strong ambitions towards net zero by 2050. So we have plenty of investments and a lot of focus on low carbon solutions, offshore wind and other options. Here is the Celtic Sea. This is the project that I'm working on. And you can see here we have other oil and gas operations and some other wind farms and some operations in UK. I'm going really fast, conscious of the time, Chris. And then for the Launch Academy, we have proposed 3 challenges to be looked into. One of them is optimization of tools for port and vessel operations for low carbon fuels. We know we are expecting a lot of changes on the vessel operations to transition into low carbon fuels. So this challenge is focusing on how we can optimize the port and vessel operations. The Celtic Sea specifically has a huge tidal variation, which has a big impact on the pre-assembly sites and on the vessel operations. So this challenge is focusing on technical solutions to reduce downtime caused by these tidal variations. And the third one is, as we're moving to low carbon fuels, hybrid and electric vessels in the future, the intention is to have a solution for powering or recharging those vessels offshore to reduce the number of trips back to shore for recharging, so we can keep them next to site for a longer time, reducing the number of trips and optimizing our operations. That was what I had. Hopefully within the time frame.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Yeah, that was fantastic. And I'm sure we'll get several questions at the end on the challenges because they're all very exciting.
Sure.
But with that, we'll move on. So next we have David Bould from Ørsted, and you will be presenting challenges developed by Ørsted as part of our Launch Academy program. I'm sharing my screen. Is that coming through okay?
That looks good to me, yeah. Perfect.
Brilliant.
Great. Well, yeah, thank you very much for the introduction, Chris, and for everyone joining us today. Hopefully you're seriously considering applying to Launch Academy by now. My name is Dave Bould. I'm lead R&D specialist with Ørsted, and I look after our open innovation and ventures scope in the UK, along with our work with academia globally, so our research collaborations with universities. On the next slide, Chris, it's just in case anyone doesn't know too much about Ørsted. We're a developer, owner, and operator of green energy systems. We've got a footprint across the UK and continental Europe, across the US and APAC. We're the global leader in offshore wind. We have over 11 gigawatts either installed and in operation or currently under construction. And our ambition is to take that to over 30 gigawatts in the next 7 years or so. So a massive growth strategy. Our largest market for offshore wind is the UK. We have more installed capacity there than any other market. We also have around 5 gigawatts of onshore wind and solar projects. Several of those include storage. They're across the US and Europe. We have bioenergy and waste energy plants. They're almost exclusively in Denmark. We're quite rapidly becoming a significant developer, owner and operator of green fuels assets. So we're talking about things like hydrogen from renewable electricity. And we have a pipeline of around 3 gigawatts in Europe. And much of that's going to be co-located with our wind farms. And the next slide, please, Chris. And this one's just for a bit of background to our challenge. So I guess it's not so long since simply building offshore wind farms put you on the cutting edge of the energy transition. But it's not taken much more than a decade. Offshore wind has gone from being a bit of a niche to being really widely accepted as the backbone of the future of, well, the current and future energy systems. And what we see is that those energy systems are rapidly becoming more complex and much more integrated through necessity. So this slide shows our idea of how future energy systems will look. Offshore wind, it's already a major contributor, but it's going to grow in scale massively and become by far the most dominant source of power in energy systems. Onshore renewables will upscale lots too, and the role of fossil fuels for power production will be largely displaced. Projects are going to get to the size where it makes sense for them to straddle national borders, and energy islands will become major hubs for integrating various generation and storage and export systems. And then green fuels made using green electricity, they'll become the main source of energy for sectors that are harder to electrify. So we're talking about things like heavy transport, agriculture, industrial heat. Customers, they won't simply buy their electricity by the unit from the grid, but they'll start to more and more favor novel, more direct purchase agreements, evolutions of today's PPAs. And then all of this is tied together in a far smarter, more communicative method of operating energy systems. So ensuring that the much more diverse set of supply and demand systems operate together in the most efficient or effective way. And then onto the challenge itself. So the challenge we're putting to you guys, it's already becoming more and more uncommon for renewable power plants to be, you could say, like a pure play generator, so with a single type of generation device. So a lot of modern assets are designed as hybrid power plants. They've got some form of integrated energy storage, perhaps even some kind of power to X systems, and perhaps several types of generation, such as wind and solar. So the very simplified definition of a hybrid power plant I'm using here is a power plant with several different integrated generation and storage systems co-located. And it's probably not too much of an exaggeration to say that most, if not all, renewable power plants of the future will be hybrids of some form. Hybrid power plants, they allow us to offer power with much higher availability, allow us to more accurately match supply to demand, and they also allow us to provide many of the additional services that grids need for stable, efficient functioning. So it's these services that are really the core of our challenge. So we're talking about things like voltage support, inertia, black start, this side of things. And you can see a full listing of those services that we have in mind in the challenge document on the Launch Academy website. So what we want to work out is how can we stack and aggregate these services more effectively. So essentially selling packages of these services. And that will allow us to optimize our revenue streams from providing these services and mitigate the risk of being a power producer in potentially unsubsidized markets. And I definitely don't want to limit your creativity in this challenge in any way. So it's not an exhaustive list at all, but what you might have in mind is hardware and software solutions for control of hybrid power plants, or maybe more commercial and contractual approaches to achieving something similar. And I'd say an equally interesting variation on that concept is aggregating and stacking grid services from several power plants that are not co-located. And certainly we're equally interested to see solutions in that space as well. I think, Chris, that's probably me about out of time, but hopefully we've got a bit of time for Q&A at the end, or reach out to me and the Launch Academy team anytime. Thank you.
Fantastic, Dave. That was brilliant. Thanks very much. And with that, we're coming towards the end of our sponsor introductions. We've got one more sponsor left to present. I'd like to invite Bob Flint to present for BP whenever you're ready, Bob.
Fantastic, thanks, Chris. Yeah, so BP, I'm Bob Flint. I'm a VP of Digital Science. And the first thing I should say is that although I represent a digital team, we are super interested in physical technologies as well. So we're going to sponsor a stream which is looking at open-ended challenges. We were involved in the Launch Academy last year. We've really enjoyed it and have been bowled over by the quality of submissions. But we also saw that a lot of people wanted to propose things that they've been working on, which weren't necessarily aligned with a specific challenge, but were brilliant in and of themselves. So we're very happy to step into that role and stand back and look at the quality of ideas which may have been preconceived. So next slide, please. Super quick view of BP. I'm sure many of you will know us as by heritage an oil and gas company, over 110 years old, and having been operating in the UK for the vast majority of that time, particularly in Scotland as regards offshore activities. I should say that we're going to leverage a lot of that offshore expertise in our next phase, which is to scale up our offshore wind ambitions. We are actually very active already and have been for decades in onshore wind, but we are a new entrant in offshore wind. And in some cases, we're partnering with others, including Equinor, our friends at Equinor on this call today, with partnerships depending on geography. Next slide, please. So then we're moving from being essentially a commodities company to being an integrated energy company. So we will leverage our capabilities in all stages of the value chain, I suppose, to say that we're going to knit together a number of businesses going from just being essentially a hydrocarbons company, magnifying our presence in renewables, for example, where we're active in solar, wind, and biofuels. We're going to grow that effort in biofuels too as another separate business line. We're going to magnify our work in hydrogen, and there clearly are big links between the world of wind and the world of hydrogen. We're already very active in vehicle mobility through fuels and lubricants, and we are one of the UK's biggest players in EV charging too, so we're growing that business very rapidly. And then there's also a convenience business which sits alongside that. So multiple growth in new value chains, and a bit like we heard from our friends in the last presentation, knitting together those value chains to create complex energy systems. Next slide, please. So in offshore wind, we are working very actively in the UK. I guess our focus here at the moment is in Mona and Morgan, which are in the Irish Sea, and then Morven, which is about 60 kilometers off the coast of Aberdeen. In the North Sea, we've been very active for many decades, and we're using this as an opportunity to reinvigorate our investment in Scotland, for example, where we'll have an offshore wind operations and maintenance centre of excellence based in Aberdeen. We're investing in the development of a group of new vessels for support purposes, investing in skills and investing in the local supply chain. Next slide, please. So I guess what I'll end on is that open-ended challenge. We're super interested in floating wind, and that's, of course, a new arena for pretty much everybody. There will be bottom fixed as well alongside that. we're very interested in ideas that span the whole life cycle of wind farms. So anything from right at the start, looking at bidding, through operations and maintenance, and into decommissioning. We're interested, as I say, in both the digital and the physical aspects. And it could also be at the turbine level, at the wind farm or asset level, could also be at the system level. So anything that connects wind assets into other parts of the system, like hydrogen or mobility, would be of interest to us. Thanks very much indeed. In anticipation, I really look forward to seeing your ideas.
Thank you very, very much, Bob. And thank you to all of the presenters from our sponsors that have been kind enough to join us today and provide a bit of information on their respective either technology challenges or the open call itself. I would really like to take this opportunity to encourage any attendees to ask any questions that come to mind, any clarifications if necessary. Please pop them in the Q&A function at the bottom. But we'll continue with our session for the time being, and I'd like to invite James from Jet Connectivity.
Thanks, Chris.
Hi, James.
Thanks, everyone, for giving us an opportunity to have a chat to everyone today. I think, having been part of the Launch Academy program, I thought it was very valuable to give a little bit of an insight on what it actually is, because it's so much more than what it says. It's very different from a lot of the other accelerators we've met on the way. And I think it's the intangible benefits that really helped us on that journey. So a little bit about what we do to start potentially. We're building floating mobile phone networks. So 5G on platforms at sea to try and create connectivity whilst we're building wind farms, for example. That's the sort of use cases we're trying to enable with those connected platforms. And what was really exciting was the Launch Academy guys recognized that this had a substantial value across the sector, but it wasn't just in one place. So they helped us engage with not just the one player who had sponsored us into the program, but actually helped us to talk to all of those players in that region. They made a lot of impact in us, trying to help us understand actually what's the follow-on projects, how do we gain access to mentoring, access to funding. We're now working with ERE Catapult in probably 5 or 6 different areas, and probably more than I've actually told Chris that we're actually working on, which is pretty cool. And it's the support's been the intangible. It's not just we're going to take you through an accelerator program, we're going to teach you how to write a pitch deck, we're going to teach you how to do a business model canvas and all the usual sort of stuff that people explain on the sort of the intros. It's we're going to help you understand the industry, we're going to help you understand the scale of what we're trying to achieve. We're going to try you on the journey to understand what energy transition means, and it's inquantifiable in terms of what that looks like, but actually standing next to a wind turbine up close with a blade and looking at stress testing on a blade, how do you stress test a 100-200 meter long piece of composite fabric? You know, how do we go and measure those kind of challenges? You can't explain until you've got experience with that, and that advice and support from the team was absolutely incredible. They went above and beyond, and I mean that was also the sponsors. So across the board, all the sponsors took the time to speak to us to understand what we were doing, to give us some feedback, and actually say, look, comms is exciting, but if you could start to measure wind as well, that's really exciting. Or if you could, you know, things that seem simple, but actually they said, and it's not just wind at height. What we need is the profile. You know, it's all the little learning curves. And that wouldn't have been possible without the support of the Catapult and everyone there that's helped us on that journey. Couldn't recommend the program more. It was quite light touch, but you could get more out of it where you wanted. So it wasn't a case of you've got to turn up to hundreds of workshops and go through this process of investor readiness, which was 15 workshops on analyzing your VC funding path, building the route to capital, defining who the investors you're going to go and target was, looking at that roadmap. It wasn't that. It was a case of, so what help do you need? Do you need capital? Do you need to raise capital? Where is your business on that journey? What capital do you want? Because again, it's big industry stuff here. We're developing the IP that we're going to get the bigger guys to sponsor, or we're actually going to go down that equity finance route that you tend to get pushed down with all our tech accelerators. And that was really exciting because it gave us the opportunity to think more about what we were trying to achieve as a business. So again, couldn't recommend it more. Really great bunch of people as well, and really supportive team at the Catapult that helped us along on our journey. We've gone from 10 heads to 20 heads in a year, thanks to some of the support they've done. I think we've got 4 hires coming in this month. We've gone from being sort of like a few $100,000 of revenue to several million pounds now, and it's such a big step change. And yeah, thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate the last sort of year or so been working together.
James, thank you so much for that whirlwind tour of your experience, and yeah, spot on, right on time. It's been really exciting to watch your journey, and thank you so much for coming along today. Please feel free to contact James on LinkedIn or reach out and look up Jet Connectivity. They're really exciting. And with that, we'll move on to our next session. Alex Loudon, when you're ready.
Thanks, Chris. Is my screen coming through okay?
Yes, all good.
Perfect. And yeah, I guess first off, thank you for joining the webinar. We're really excited to be reopening Launch Academy for applications. Thanks, Chris, for doing a brilliant introduction to the program, and to our sponsors, and James for adding some color to that as well. So it falls to me to talk through the application process, which you'll go through if you're interested in joining the program, and to do the Q&A. So we've got a few really good questions trickling in into the Q&A, so please do keep those coming. And if there's anything that comes up while I'm talking, feel free to fire it in, and we'll do our best to answer them. And if we can't answer them online, we will absolutely take them offline and get back to you. So without further ado, I guess the start of the application process is determining how your business fits in with the program. So we've heard about all the challenges, and as well the open call that BP is involved with. And so the first step is really to understand, is the technology that your business is developing relevant to one of the challenges, or is it relevant to the open call? Understanding that is really important. If you've got any questions about whether you're applicable to any of the challenges, we are very happy to have those discussions and help you understand. And so the way it works is that each sponsor, so Equinor, Ørsted, RWE, and BP, will get to select 2 companies to join the program. And then 2 companies will be chosen by committee by all the sponsors, so that we end up with a cohort of 10 companies who are either applicable to the challenges that have been set, or have a game-changing technology which is targeting a market opportunity in the offshore wind sector. So once you've determined how your technology and your business fits with the program, I guess there's a few very practical steps to go through to submit your application. So obviously, step number 1, head over to the website where you can find detailed challenge information with a PDF going into detail of the requirements for each challenge, and more information about the support on offer through the program as well. And the way to apply is through a Microsoft form hosted on the website. Now, it's worth flagging here that the Microsoft Forms does not save your progress. So we've also added a supporting document, a Word document that you can complete offline and then copy and paste your answers in case you want to start the application, then come back to it later, just to make your life as easy as possible. So the application form itself covers 8 kind of key areas. So it asks for basic details, kind of contact details, and the nature of your business, and what challenges you are responding to, or if it's the open call. And then we really want to understand through this application process what your technology is and how it solves the challenge that you're targeting. So, really think about how, what it is about your technology that meets the needs of the challenge, or meets the needs of the market opportunity which you have identified. We want to understand the level of development it is. Are you at a prototype stage? Is it, virtually commercial? Is it somewhere in between? Are you still at a kind of, a more fundamental modeling sort of stage? This is all okay, but we really want to understand and get under the skin of how developed your technology currently is. Linked to that, and equally important, is the steps that you need to take to continue the development of your technology. Launch Academy is here to accelerate your product to market. And so we want to understand what the steps that your business is facing to continue your technology development and take your product to market. So that's a really important piece that we ask about. We want to know more about your organization. So, who's involved in your organization? What's the team and the track record and the expertise that you've brought together to develop this innovation? And what resources are available to you as you progress your journey? We're not expecting you to have everything solved, but having a better understanding of, perhaps where your gaps are gives us a better understanding of how Launch Academy can really help and accelerate your business. So, this is why we're asking these questions. We want to understand what your vision and your business model is. So, what in 5 years, what do you see the impact of your technology and your business being on the industry? And ultimately, how is that going to make your business money? Because we live in a world where, that needs to be clear, is how your technology will actually make your business money. And that needs to be based on a clear value proposition. So we want to understand that. Again, part of the program is helping you to refine that and develop that. So we're not expecting all of the answers, but we need you to be thinking about these at that stage. And then last but not least, we want to understand what you want to achieve by joining the program. What are the key barriers that you're facing, and why will Launch Academy help you to overcome those? So the deadline for completing that application form is the 30th of November. So I've just noticed there's a typo on my slide. Many apologies for that. So you've got about 4 weeks to complete that application. And if you've got any questions at all about that, please don't hesitate to get in touch. We'd be happy to help. So you've submitted this application. Hopefully it doesn't take too long. It's not an overly onerous application form. But what happens next? Well, over the months of December and January, between the sponsors and ORI Catapult, we will assess all of your applications through what you've included in the form, and shortlist those which we want to invite to a pitch session. So in January and February, we will hold pitch sessions for the shortlisted companies to come and deliver a presentation on their technology and their company, where we can dive into a bit more detail over what was included in the application form. These will be fairly short, fairly informal pitches, about 15 minutes. But importantly, there'll be a really good opportunity for some Q&A for the sponsors and for ORI Catapult to kind of get under the skin and understand whether or not your company is going to benefit from Launch Academy and whether to join the program. So ultimately, the cohort will be selected based on those pitches, which we will ask you to cover kind of 4 key areas. First being the team that is around the technology in the company, the technology itself, the impact you're likely to have on the industry, and then, as I say, a Q&A to really get under the skin of it. And so we'd expect those to take place over the month of February. And then last but not least, once we've held those pitches and determined the final 10 companies to join the cohort, we will invite those chosen companies to begin the program with an opening event held at the start of March. And that really is day 1 of Launch Academy. And we will start off by understanding what your growth ambitions look like and how Launch Academy can fit in and support you to realize those. So yeah, really excited to see the cohort of companies that we end up with this year. And as I say, the deadline for this initial application is the 30th of November. So I'll move on to the Q&A session now. If you've got any questions about the application process, please don't hesitate to put them in the Q&A function on Zoom. So I will stop sharing my screen now and move on to the Q&A. So, okay, so the first one, easy enough to answer. Your slide on stage 1 states 30th of October. What is the deadline date as this is now passed? Yeah, apologies for this. As I say, the deadline is the 30th of November. We will update the slides when they're circulated so that you've got the correct information there, and it is the correct date on the website as well. So how is IP protected at an application/review phase? Good question. So we don't need to see any confidential information about your technology in order to assess your application. I guess if you've applied for a public funding grant before, you'll know the sort of level of detail that they expect. It's about understanding the the technology and the level of development, not how it works and the inner workings and all the kind of IP that you've generated as a company. So please don't include anything in the application phase that you would not be comfortable with being public domain. That said, this anything that you put in the application is not going to be shared publicly. It is purely for the sponsors and for ORE Catapult to assess, and we shouldn't need to see any confidential information. So hopefully that's clear. So we've got a question: can we contact the challenge leads directly, and will those emails be shared? We will check with the challenge leads to see whether they're happy, and when we send out the recording of this webinar, we will include those if they are happy. Does Launch Academy give any direct financial support? No, Launch Academy does not come with any funding for the companies joining the cohort. The support on offer is free of charge, so there's no cost to any companies joining the accelerator beyond some travel to some of the modules and events. So ORE Catapult will deliver all of the content in collaboration with our delivery partners at no cost to the company. So hopefully that's clear. We've got a question here: can a company apply for the partner challenge topics as well as the open call, i.e. 2 separate applications? So there are 2 answers to this question. If your technology applies to 2 different challenges, there is the opportunity in the form to state this. So the first question about the challenges will ask you to indicate which challenge you're applying to. And then the second question will ask you whether your technology is applicable to any other category, including the open call. So if your technology is applicable to both and it's the same technology, then great. If it is 2 separate technologies, we would encourage you to submit 2 separate applications for separate consideration, please. And then the final question we've got here, we've got some more coming in as well. So with the range of developers involved, is there a focus on floating or fixed projects and solutions? So I think all of the challenges are technologies which could be applied both to fixed or floating wind farms. And I'd encourage those who presented on behalf of the sponsors to chime in if they want to add anything to this. But all of the technologies could be applied to either fixed or floating farms. Having said that, obviously, Equinor's challenges are specifically linked to their ambitions in the Celtic Sea, which is a leasing round for floating farms specifically. However, the nature of their challenges will result in technologies that could be applied to any wind farm. Yes, I guess don't let your imagination be stifled by fixed or floating. Clearly for some technologies in the open category, they might be very floating specific or very fixed specific. That's okay too, but there's no limitations in terms of eligibility for the program. So does the support count against state aid / de minimis? Yes, so part of the funding for delivering Launch Academy is from ORE Catapult, which means that there is some de minimis aid involved in delivering the program. It's not a significant amount because much of the funding does come from industry to deliver the program. But if you've got any specific questions about that, please don't hesitate to get in touch and we can explain some more about how that works specifically. So that's all the questions which we've had in on the Q&A. when we send out the recording to all those who registered, we will include our contact details as well. If you have any further questions, or you can email innovation@ore.catapult.org.uk, and one of the team will get back to you as soon as they can. But I'll just hand back to Chris to wrap up and say thank you. But from me, a really warm welcome to the webinar, and all the best in your applications.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Alex. And thank you to all of you who've posed some really good questions throughout that Q&A session there. I'm really quite glad to introduce Launch Academy 2023 and introduce some of the technology challenges developed by our fantastic range of sponsors that we've got participating in the program for next year. I'd really encourage you to reach out to either myself or Alex on LinkedIn if you have any further questions, or reach out at the innovation@ore Catapult email inbox that Alex just suggested. But otherwise, thank you all very, very much for attending. Thank you to our presenters today, and have a lovely day. Thank you. Goodbye, all.